Órale, bienvenidos and welcome to the Familia FFB podcast. I'm your host, Jorge Martin. And hey, Familia, remember, we're a part of the Fantasy Points Media Group. Please make sure to give us, put in the Familia 22 promo code and get 10% off. And our guest is going to have had a little bit something to do with that. But first off, also remember we're on YouTube, so give us a like and subscribe, por favor. And as I mentioned, just our guest, our invitado de lujo, as I always love to talk him. He's a return guest, and though this time we have video as well as audio. But Dr. Edwin Porras, mi amigo, he is one of the leading injury experts in the fantasy industry. But not only that, now he's a two-sport guy. He's like the Deion Sanders of physical therapy, Deion Sanders, Bo Jackson of physical therapists. So, because he was so good at his day job that he got drafted by the Minnesota Twins medical staff. So he's working on the minor league side. But if I know anything about Edwin, he's going to be in the show before you know it. And because he has become also, as I mentioned, he's one of the leading analysts with Fantasy Points. He made the recommendation for Familia FFB to join, and we just came aboard recently. So, but more importantly, he's above all everything else, he's become a good friend, amigo, compadre. He has given great counsel to my daughter Solana as she embarks on her prospective career as a physical therapist. She's just a senior in high school, as I mentioned. So it's got a little ways to go, but can't thank him enough for just being one of my favorite people. So, otra vez, bienvenido, Edwin Porras. Gracias. Thank you for joining us. Como siempre, estás en tu casa, mi amigo.
So, estoy en mi casa en Florida. Tengo dos casas. I have two houses at this point, man. It's crazy. My wife's holding it down. I'm here in Florida, spring training, things crazy. But that's such a nice intro, man. Like, the thing is, I really care about my job a lot, my day job. I love being a physical therapist. I love being, in the crux of injury analysis. But if there's one thing that I would want anybody to ever remember about me, is I would want them to say what you said, is like, he was a good friend. I want to be a good human. So I want to be a good human to everybody around me. That's what matters to me. Football, baseball, all of it comes after that. I want to be a good husband. I want to be a good friend. And I want to be somebody you can come to for discussions regarding tacos, tequila, cerveza. All of those things in a nutshell are basically what I am, man. So I'm excited to be here again, and we're gonna get to talking about a lot of relevant stuff, not the least of which is going to be probably some tacos at some point.
Oh man, well, in honor of you, because we're talking, for beer and baseball, I'm wearing a Dodger jersey, but it is actually Fernando Valenzuela. So Fernando Valenzuela throwback. So our two Mexicanos, and it's also a shout out to John Hansen of Fantasy Points. So John, you got a standing invite to be on here, so you're gonna have to come on during this at some point between now and the off season. But Edwin, this has been such a microwave spring training for you. With everything just coming up, it's been a whirlwind couple months. How is the you settled in, now in the baseball mode after having been in a football mode on top of your day job?
That's funny, man. It's been a whirlwind. I'm not going to lie. I talked to my wife last night. I recently also took my specialist exam to become an orthopedic specialist. And I told her, like, I have no idea, because there was a period of overlap of about 10 days where I was studying. It was spring training, and I was just trying. I was just holding on for dear life. And yesterday I told her, like, I don't know how I was doing that, right? Because they're long days. Get up, we're there. First meetings are at 6:30, and we're grinding, man. We're doing it because we were talking about this before we hit record. The minor leaguers never left. The minor leaguers are there. Now the big leaguers are here. We're doing our thing, right? Everybody's sort of they've divvied up all the fields and everything. But I mean, the grind for the minor leaguers never stopped. It was always going. Now it's just a matter of dividing our resources and dividing and conquering, that the big leaguers are here for their sort of accelerated spring training, and they recently started games this week. So we've got a lot going on. And I told you, like, I needed a bit of a break. I needed some escape. I needed to talk to my friend Jorge about some fantasy football, about some tequila, some tacos. I needed to give you crap about not bringing me on with the primos. Maybe you know what? I'm thinking about it now. I got it on second thought. Tal vez los primos no me quieren a mí. Maybe they don't want to talk to me. Maybe that's what it is. So primos, I'm on to you. I'm seeing this is the second time I'm on, and Jorge's the only one here. So I'm on to you, man. I'm on to all of you.
Oh, the Primos, you get the major shout out. Okay, it's a challenge for next time. You guys kind of be on. So we got to get on earlier, so because Edwin's 3 hours ahead of us in the future. One last one about before we get into the football side. You've had so much injury analysis, and you're so good at it. But now being able to see the everything happen, and you're doing prehab as well as rehab. Are there any injury differentiators between baseball and football? And I would hazard to guess, is it mostly concentrated on the pitcher side?
I love that question because there's no good answer. I can't really speak to what it looks like on the inside inner workings for football, right? But I can tell you on a baseball perspective, everything is complicated by the fact that it's like, what is it, George? It's like 162 and 180 days, right? Or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
It is constant. It is all the time. It is go, go, go. You can do whatever formula with your workload ratios, and you can calculate spin rates, and you can look at velocities, and you can look at changeups, and you can look at, ERA, whatever. You can look at FIP, you can look at WHIP, whatever it is. At the end of the day, when you've got individuals who are traveling cross country, they're on 4 hours of sleep, maybe they chugged 3 cups of coffee just to get on the field, and they're sleep deprived and they miss their families, and it's game, 82 out of 162 and whatever the case may be. A lot of that stuff, like, it kind of goes out the window. Like, you tell your guys it's a grind, it's a grind, do what you can, you survive, you try to perform at your best. And so I think that football, it's not that football isn't that way. It's that it seems that football is almost comparatively a sprint because you have 17 weeks, right? There are only 17 weeks. In baseball, you're looking at a marathon. I mean, it is the true definition of a marathon. You have to be micro level ready and macro level prepared. And I think that, just as because I'm still technically an outsider on the football end of things, I think that's the biggest difference that I see in football is, and you see these decisions that are made in football, right? Like, dudes come back quickly. Why? Because there's only 17 of these weeks, right? With baseball, it's not that you don't try to get the dudes back, but if they need to take 7 days, if they need to take 10 days, if they need to take 14 days, okay, you don't want them to miss that time, but it's not going to be as detrimental as 2 or 3 games, in the NFL. Obviously it all depends on what's going on and what the athlete has going on. But I think that would be the biggest difference is it is a grind for most of the season for baseball players in a very different way than it is for football players. And it's not to say that it's any easier or any harder. It's just totally different beasts.
Yeah. You talked about it. It's about 2 months longer season. So, I mean, because baseball season full of 162 and 180, 81 days, I think I think it ends up being 26 weeks total. So it's just, it really is the crucible, and they play it every day. And that's why you'll hear so much more about like the even keel mentality. You need that not to be too high or too low in baseball, as opposed to in football, where you need that football mentality where you're just a manic crazy guy on Sundays. So man,
baseball, you have to find that flow state in baseball.
Yep.
Where you are long-term focused, you sort of deal with the ebbs and the flows, to where I do feel like in football there's more of a like, that was a shitty week, let's take Monday off, we'll hit a reset, get back to it on Tuesday, film and walk through. Wednesday, we'll get back on the practice field. We can hit the reset button. That doesn't exist in baseball, right? Like, that's not, and there's something to be said about that mentality too. Like, the mental side of things is huge. And when you are mentally dealing with, when you can give yourself, stops like that, when you give yourself that mental like flip and switch, like that definitely is significant. And again, I'm not trying to say that it's any easier. An NFL season is any easier. It's not. It's insane. Right? They have to be insane. They have to be dogs. They have to get after it. It's just, like I said, it's a totally different world.
Yeah. And those guys just really I mean, you're right. It's different. It's a lot. Baseball is just so I mean, yeah, there are days where you have to really pick yourself up off the ground for those dog days of August. And now, have you had any pleasant surprises in the new gig before we jump on the football side?
All of it, man. All of it. I've enjoyed all of it. Like, I cannot complain. I have the best job in the world. It sounds cliche and it sounds annoying. And I used to get annoyed when I'd hear it, but my alarm goes off at 5:30 every day, and it has gone off every day except for one day over the last, 18, 19 days. And it doesn't bother me. I'm like, all right, time to get up and go to work. And
Love
like,
it.
I really, truly didn't understand that until this job. And I get it now. And it's not like I'm excited that my alarm's going off 5:30, right? But like, if I was going to go to the regular grind 9 to 5, and I knew I was going to do it for the next 30 days, 35 days, getting up at 5:30, it becomes a bit of a struggle. But knowing that I'm waking up, I'm going to do working with these athletes that I'm having a good time getting to know. I'm helping them get back on the field or helping them stay on the field, whatever the case may be. It's fun, man. Like, it's honestly a dream job, and I couldn't be more grateful for my position right now.
No, I love it. I love it. Well, let's switch over to the football side because I've had stuck in my head for the past like 3-4 months something that you mentioned to me about a year ago when we had our first interview, where it takes about a year for a ACL injury to really, be from the date of the surgery till that year where I think you mentioned where the graft really to take. I hope I said that correct. And you're and then we had this slew of late season injuries, ACL injuries, mostly to receivers. One was a tight end that happened from November till the Super Bowl, and even a couple college prospects that had that. And in the fantasy industry, I keep hearing analysts, non-medical professionals, analysts like me, not like you, who are talking about these guys having, being ready for being close to being ready for the beginning of the season, and I just keep thinking, you know what, I need mi amigo on here to just kind of, yeah, either, kind of quiet things down a little bit and help me kind of make sure that people, and you maybe establish some realistic expectations for guys. So I'm glad you're nodding. So I think I kind of hit it right. But yeah, I mean, as they accumulated so much, I wanted to talk about kind of like their injury outlook, and I'm going to go in order of guys that they got hurt. I'm going to throw them out there when they got hurt, and I'd love to see kind of like your thought process on this. I mean, before we get into them, anything you'd want to add about, like, how long to have a regular rest and rehab before a guy is ready to get back on the field?
So it's going to vary between positions. You saw Joe Burrow when people were getting out of hand with he's going to be back and doing live drills with pads in June. I said, whoa. No, he's not. It's going to take a while. It was a huge injury. You're the one actually who sent me that an article from The Athletic where you said, oh yeah, look, they didn't even put Mixon in the backfield because they didn't want him to accidentally run into Burrow. And I was like, exactly. Like, I think people get carried away with how quickly they think these athletes recover. Yes, they're high-level athletes. Yes, they get the best medical care possible, and they get it round the clock if they want it. But at the end of the day, they are biological animals, just like you and I. Tissue healing takes a while now. Takes a while for every human. So I would say that it varies by position. At the 9-month mark, a quarterback without setbacks, with a relatively run-of-the-mill ACL injury, they can be close. We know Burrow was cutting it really close at the beginning of this season, but he made it, right? 9 or 10 months-ish. You look at a wide receiver. For whatever reason, wide receivers, tight ends, pass catchers, they can recover around a shade after that. They do around 9-10 months. You look at somebody like Cortland Sutton. You look at somebody like Odell Beckham Jr.,
Cooper Kupp.
You look at those guys who had, and I tweeted, I think, a bunch of guys out. They, about the 10-month mark, and the difference there between, and we'll move on to running backs here in a minute, is that for whatever reason, they're able to come back and perform at a very high level. You think of Keenan Allen, you think of Allen Robinson, you just mentioned Cooper Kupp, you think of Cortland Sutton, who did just fine this year. These dudes are able to make a quick turnaround. and they can do it the season following an ACL so long as they have appropriate timelines. We move on to running back. Gets a little bit more gray. I wrote a 2,000-word piece article on Saquon Barkley last year about all of the different factors and correlates that go into a running back being successful following an ACL injury. I don't want to get on a soapbox. I don't want to, here try to defend what I said about Saquon. I think it was still, to this day, I still think it was a correct process. But you look at running backs, especially if they have a meniscus, Saquon was, he was right about 10 and a half months, right? And he still didn't take full snaps week 1 and week 2. You saw him start to take hold of the backfield before that ankle injury, which, by the way, had nothing to do with ACL. And you start to put the pieces together for around 10 or 11 months. You start to get really confident, and I mean really confident, in year 2 of an ACL. And that lines up with a lot of the research that shows about 18 months is where we see a plateau in functional outcomes and strength and the size of muscle, hypertrophy. You see these plateaus for high-level athletes, for the general population. And it takes about 12 to 15 months for that graft, for that ACL graft, to fully what you call take, right? Quote unquote take. The 12 to 15 month mark is really the sweet spot. So that is the general outlook for an ACL. So receivers and quarterbacks do a little better than running backs. It takes at least 9 to 10 months for wide receivers and running backs. And every case is individual and every case is different. Those are the big takeaways. I just rambled a lot, man.
No, it was perfect. Well, let's start with the first guy who got me thinking about this was Robert Woods. He got hurt right at the day after the Rams acquired Odell Beckham Jr., ironically. So his injury was on November 12th, and that puts him right about the 10-month mark. I know there's some talk about trade rumors around him, but even the 10-month mark, is that one being a little aggressive?
Yeah, it is. And I'll tell you why, George. An ACL, I just mentioned, right, takes about 10 months. We know that Odell just took 10 months for this initial ACL. This is going to be what's called a revision. The surgeon's going to go in there and redo what the original surgery was. They're going to redo the surgery, essentially. Those surgical procedures look different. They're not the same. Automatically, the surgery is usually different. Maybe they'll use the same type of graft. Maybe they'll use a different type of graft. You're not entirely sure. What you do see also is that a lot of it, especially for the general population, if it is a re-injury, if it is a revision, some surgeons will automatically right off the bat say, you're not going back to your sport until at least 1 year, until 12 months, period, time. We've found the sweet spot in the sports medicine community where we're balancing, are you functional, right? Are you functionally strong enough? Do you look like you are performing your task, your job-specific task adequately? Does it look good? Does it feel good? And have we allowed it time to take its course? Have we allowed time to do what it needed to do to heal and those tissues to heal? I would say conservatively, unless there's something crazy that happens, unless there's some something that they try, something's new, not in the research yet, this is likely going to take at least another 10 months for OBJ. I think that from a safe perspective, from a conservative perspective, this is going to be at least another 10 months, which puts him, I know Rappaport reported, I think November, right? Like, you also have to consider that he's got to have no setbacks. He's got to have no issues with the graft taking again. He's got to go through this entire process again. And does it help that he's been through it once? Yeah, it does. But his body doesn't necessarily care. His body is going to do what it's going to do. It's going to go through this like it's a brand new issue once again. And it's going to go through it just the same way that he went through it before. He doesn't get to, take any shortcuts because it's the second time around. So unfortunately, from like a redraft perspective, it's highly unlikely that you're going to see much from Odell Beckham Jr., even if he is back at the end of November. So it sucks. You hate to see it, but the flip side, the good news, without being all doom and gloom, is this guy left Cleveland. I remember tweeting out, like, I hope he makes these people eat their words. He was not washed. He wasn't washed from the beginning. And he ended up winning a Super Bowl, being on the right end of consoling Deebo Samuel, which is like the best thing, like best sports, like one of the best sports moment, right, over the last month or 2 months or so, is consoling Deebo Samuel as Deebo Samuel was crying on the sideline. That was cool to see. For a guy that gets so much shit about whatever, cancer locker room, blah, blah, blah. Like that dude just wears his heart on his sleeve, and he hasn't really been an issue. And he was able to, man, honestly, I'm a firm believer. I'm not even a Rams fan. If he would have stayed on the field, this final score of that game probably would have been much different in the Rams' favor. So I just went off again on the rails. I'll let you talk about that.
Well, let's talk about his teammate, Robert Woods. November, his ACL was, and it's first time ACL, November, that puts him right about the 10-month mark to opening day. Is that one being aggressive?
I wouldn't say it's being aggressive, right? There are a lot of things we don't know. We don't know when the surgery was ultimately, because there's no reports out there. I looked, can't find anything. We don't know if there was meniscus involvement. Those are the big things that you really want to know. And honestly, probably you even want to know if there's MCL involvement, because if there's MCL involvement, there's a good likelihood that they're going to wait 3 to 4 weeks to let that MCL scar down and heal itself before they go into surgery. And it's 9 months from surgery for the ACL itself. So worst case scenario, you're looking here at roughly a 10, October return for Robert Woods, if that's indeed the case. Best case scenario, like you were saying, September. Ultimately, you're looking at a very similar recovery timeline, I think, that we saw for Odell Beckham Jr. this year in 2021. And he is a guy that I honestly think that he's still a guy you should invest in. Maybe he won't have a ceiling year. Maybe he won't be Cooper Kupp and have the best year of his career up to date until after his ACL. But you see these guys go through this injury. You see them, return to form. He's a little older on the age spectrum. I wouldn't say you're going to expect a top 12 season from him, but I definitely think he can be a steal in redraft.
So you mentioned the meniscus, and there were 2 guys that I got on the list who actually, coincidentally, both were going into their free agency season. So Chris Godwin, Michael Gallup. And I was able to look up when they had their surgeries. Godwin was hurt December 19th, 21. He had his surgery on January 3rd. Gallup got hurt on New Year's Day, 22. And then he had his surgery on February 10th. So, and I know, and I've heard you also mention it's from the surgery date that you're looking at the recovery. What, considering the fact that both players were signed to multi-year contracts, so the teams that signed them are feeling good about their recovery. So I think that's a good sign. But again, how aggressive is any kind of timeline to see them starting or making contributions in the first half of this upcoming season? You're on mute still.
Wow. You think I love the sound of my voice so much, you think I'd know when I'm on mute. So unless there's something crazy, unless the team, finds this magic cure, or they're, they are going to push really, really hard, you got to get these guys at least 9 months. 9 months is when we know re-tear rates drop. After 9 months, you can essentially, even if you just look at it from like a purely legal liability standpoint, before 9 months, you're putting yourself at risk for a re-tear. You have to look at least 9 months. If there's meniscus involvement, there was at least a period after the surgery of about 3 or 4 weeks, maybe 2 or 3, where they couldn't put any weight or put very minimal weight through the knee. That sort of slows down the rehab process a little bit. That's what happened with Saquon. You automatically push their return date a little further back. It's just, you need to give them at least 9 months. And so I know that these reports get excited. You also have to consider the definition of what it means to be back. Back as in running routes on air and shorts and a helmet? Sure. Maybe 7 or 8 months, right? Back as in, you're going to run full contact drills. You're going to test the knee out the way we sort of saw Cortland Sutton do. You're going to give people time to panic because you don't have your sea legs under you. I mean, that's closer to the 9-10 month mark. That's not something you do right away. So you have to be patient with these guys. You have to understand and get a good, clear understanding that it's going to be at least 9 months from the surgical date. Knowing that, you can reverse engineer what you're willing to put into an investment for something like that, because then it could even take another 3 or 4 weeks for them to, again, like I said, get their sea legs under them. So it could be an opportunity where you say, screw it, I'm going to take a gamble elsewhere. Or it could be an opportunity where you patiently wait, you strike when the iron is not hot, and you throw them on your bench, on your IR, whatever the case may be. But understanding that this is going to be at least a 9 month mark before they are back to full game, unrestricted activity.
So, and that's why I think Russell Gage for the Bucks and CD Lamb are going to be really good investments early part of the season on each of those teams. So I'm going to be, now that I got confirmation from you, I'm going to be going a little more heavy on the other guys. Also, Schultz with the Cowboys.
Yeah, I'd say these guys are great for best ball. Those guys are like prime best ball candidates.
Love it. So I want to ask about a tight end, a big guy, 6'6", 250-pound Logan Thomas from the Washington now Commanders.
Big boy.
Yeah. So, when you talk about those big guys, the larger human beings, obviously, there's more stress on the joints and the tendons and everything, and the area, the surgically repaired area. He got hurt on December 4th. I couldn't find when he had his surgery, but do you have to kind of wait a little bit more when it's a larger human being?
I'll say my answer is no, but I'll say you take everything into context, right? So as a physical therapist, you should be evidenced in your foundation, and you should be understanding of the context of every situation. If the context is Logan Thomas is just, he's struggling, maybe he gained some weight because of the surgery, maybe he does need to take a little bit more time, then yes, absolutely. Like you take your time. The bigger body is something that's going to take a little time to get accustomed to. But if he stays on top of it, right? If he's good with everything else, if there's nothing else that's hindering him, and you can continue to progress him through the same criteria as you generally would, then yeah, you absolutely go for it. So the short answer is no. You don't automatically make an exception for somebody because of their body size, body type. Like, you take into context what they look like when you evaluate them, when you look at them, and when you do their initial evaluation after the surgery.
Awesome. So really, I mean, I kind of followed the reports as to whether he's going to be ready at the beginning of the season or at some point during the season, kind of closer to, July, when you start getting into training camp.
I'm having the hardest time with my movement. Yeah, so it's going to be, that's when you should expect him to start sort of ramping up, getting his workloads underneath him. We're going to assume the surgery within a week or so after the injury initially. So I think Logan Thomas has a bit more of an optimistic timeline than the other guys we mentioned before.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to group these next two guys because they came from the same college program. John Mechie, Jameson Williams. Mechie got hurt in the SEC title game in early December. Williams got hurt in the national championship game in January. And I mean, again, with all of the draft hype, there's a lot of draft hype more on Williams than with Mechie, but and a lot of people are talking about him being ready to contribute this season. How much tempering of enthusiasm do we need to do with these guys, especially considering that they're not going to get into an NFL training medical staff until May?
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because you're also missing a lot of team time. And I think that for wide receivers, that's super important, right? Understanding what your route tree is, understanding what a film session looks like. And it's not like they're skipping them all together, right? But they're not getting the live reps, right? They're in rehab. So I think that we should definitely temper expectations, because unless you're Jamar Chase, unless you're Justin Jefferson, which we don't necessarily think these guys are, right? It's not like we're saying they're bad, but they're not that. We should probably temper expectations, because they need those live drills. They need those mental reps. They need to be fully engaged in the process, in my opinion, to be, from a skill acquisition standpoint, to make that leap from college to the pros. Because it's not, I mean, I think we take it for granted, but it's not, you can't just flip a switch and be a pro, right? It takes these guys work, it takes these guys time, and it takes development on the coach's side. So I would definitely temper expectations, because indirectly, that the surgery and the injury and subsequent rehab is going to take away from that skill acquisition time.
No, I love it. Okay, good. Though I will take the discount on dynasty drafts, so the dynasty college drafts. So Cam Akers kind of blew the doors off of so we're talking about non-ACL on this one. Cam Akers kind of blew the doors off of the whole thought process around the Achilles tendon injury. You had James Robinson get hurt the day after Christmas this year, and the reports are he's feeling good. But Are people going to get overheated because Akers was pretty much did a miracle comeback and kind of have a similar expectation level for James Robinson?
I think yes. I think the short answer is yes, because for one, Robinson's not the caliber of athlete that Cam Akers is, and he just doesn't have the workload and he doesn't have the situation that Cam Akers has. I was talking before we hit record, like I hate being the dude to douse the excitement flame on Cam Akers, because what he did is incredible. What
Yeah.
he did is in the top 1% of what's ever been done, recorded, documented for that injury, but he still didn't perform. And now you can go back, you can say none of the running backs performed, their rushing DVOA was bad or whatever, their rushing scores were bad and they were getting hit on the line of scrimmage. It's all true. Cam Akers was still the worst of all of them. And if we were really looking for Cam Akers to pop, we would expect him to look the best of that group, to perform the best of that group, to statistically put up numbers that were the best of that group. And even after the penalties, even after everything you adjust for, he just wasn't the same guy. And you wouldn't, I'm not saying that as an indictment. That's not something that you would expect from a guy after, 7 months after an Achilles tear. That's ridiculous. But it's definitely something that I think people are going to unfortunately use him as the rule as opposed to what he should be, which is the exception.
Yeah, I think James Robinson. I mean, I've got him on a dynasty team that I'm just going to hold on to him, and hope for the best. But yeah, I'm not going to expect him to come back and be 1,200 yards guy. Now you kind of teased this last one, and you talked about Saquon, just kind of and everything that you said. Not because you're my amigo, but because you're wicked smart, as they would say in the Northeast, about Saquon. I'm starting to feel people are kind of down on him, and I'm kind of feeling like he's a bounce back candidate that I want to take at a discount this year, because he's going to have a full off season of regular, no rehab. It's a full training off season. The ankle has been fully healed. I'm kind of, they're going to invest in the offensive line. Can you, you want to throw water on it, or are you going to fan the flame for me on Saquon hype?
I'm going to double down this year. The process on Saquon was not incorrect last year. The process was correct. He had a subsequent ankle injury nobody anticipated that had nothing to do with the ACL injury, and he just went down. That offense was terrible. It was literally the worst in the league by many measures, or bottom 3. It was not good. Let me read you some stats, amigo. Saquon pre-injury. Week 1, 48% of snaps. Week 2, 84%. Week 3, 86%. Week 4, 89%. Targets. Week 1, 3 targets. Week 2, 3 targets. Week 3, I don't think I can count. Week 1, 3 targets. Week 2, 3 targets. Week 3, 6 targets. Week 4, 7 targets. Fantasy points. Week 1, this is in PPR. Actually, I believe half PPR. No, it's got to be PPR. I don't remember what I said. Either half PPR or PPR. Week 1, 3.7. Week 2, 8.9. Week 3, 21.4. Week 4, 29.6. Saquon was going to perform before the ankle injury got in the way. Is the ankle a concern? Moderate. Is his performance a concern moving forward? Moderate. Is he a dude that is still quite literally one of the best athletes we've seen at the running back position since Adrian Peterson, who's only 25 years old? Yes. I'm buying Saquon Barkley because the process says to buy Saquon Barkley.
I love it. Yeah, I love all that, and the fact that, and plus he's going into a contract year. Players seem to perform best.
Players do ball out contract years,
and they're investing in the offensive line. I think there's just too many pluses to not. He's going to be one of the guys. He's going to be one of my guys this year, because if he's fallen to the 3rd round in a redraft league, damelo. So, big time. All right, so I got one last fun one for you. So you made a little change, from Sacramento to Florida on the southern side. As you mentioned, now there's a lot more Cuban food. I mean, tell me what kind of what's my expectation level when I come visit you?
So first of all, great Cuban food. Love the Cuban places. I don't have a favorite. There's one place called Cubans Be Like here. That's really good down here. Love it. Haven't found a good taco spot yet, man. So I'm still on the search for a good taco spot. Un taqueria con un carne asada. A little bit of pair it with whatever you want. Una corona, whatever. I'm still looking for that place. I will let you know once I find it. But I will tell you that the Cuban food down here is incredible. And when you come down here after the primos meet me, if they still want to meet me, because maybe they hate me, we don't know. We haven't decided, that jury's out on that. We'll look together. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, I love that. The bar crawl all over the place and just looking for some good Mexican food, probably at 2:00 in the morning after everything's done. Hopefully not with a double header on hand for on tap for the next day.
Yeah, hopefully not. Hopefully not.
Oh, mi amigo. Oh, como siempre, es un gran placer. Thank you so much for joining me on this one. I know everybody who's following me is probably following you, but hey, you know what? The great thing I love is that you're still being active on Twitter, because I know how busy your day is. But yeah, throw it out there where everybody's going to find your stuff.
At FB Injury Doc, that Mexican Injury Analyst.
Hey, viva la raza on this one. So this is always good. I mean, this is a shout out to our mutual friend Mauricio Gutierrez, who I'm sure is going to put a hashtag Latino Power on this one when he retweets it. But everybody, thank you. Esto fue un gran placer. Please make sure when you go to fantasypoints.com, put Familia22 and get your 10% discount. Also, make sure you give us a like and subscribe on YouTube, Familia FFB. That's the name. You find us there on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, under there. You can find me, Jorge Martin 17 on Twitter. I push all our content out there on there. So from coast to coast, from California to Florida, remember everybody, todos somos familia. Salud.